I'm on the GSX-8S. We're back in Passaic. When I turned 16, it was February of 1994. In May of 1994, I got married. I got married at this church right here. By September of 1994, I also became a dad. So 94 was a crazy year. I turned 16, got married, and had a baby. And this is where I got married at. My mom had to go down to City Hall, sign for me to get married. Crazy time in my life. 16 years old, married. The time when I was getting married, she was 5 months pregnant. I don't know, it was something back then that if you got a girl pregnant, you had to marry her. It was weird. I have other siblings that were married as teens also. Crazy, right? Let's go take a ride. I'm sure I'm not the only teenager that's gotten married. Porsche, look at that. At some point my parents owned that house there. We'll come back to it. Look, we all have a life story. I'm just telling mine to see if it helps anybody that might be going through something or has gone through something and can't figure out, you know, if things are ever going to change for them. Look, life doesn't stay the same. I'm not asking for pity. I'm just telling my story. That's it. You know, if you like it, great. If you don't, I don't know what to tell you. But I went through shit, you know, and I'm sure that a lot of you have gone through stuff too. And look, I turned out okay, and I hope you did too. If you want to tell your story, go ahead and say it. You know, get online, tell your story, encourage other people to do better. This is the border of Passaic and Clifton. My first apartment was in this building right here. Lived here for a couple of years with her. When we first initially moved in, we had to get the light and gas, you know, under our name. So I go down to the place and I try to get the light and gas done. The lady says like, well, you're a minor, you can't get it under your name. And I was like, well, I'm married. And she's like, what do you mean you're married? I'm like, yeah, I'm married. And she's like, well, bring your marriage certificate. Same thing with the bank. I went into the bank. I was trying to get a bank account. The lady like looked at me, where your parents at? And I'm like, no, I'm married. And she's like, what? Bring your marriage license. Who gets married at 16? I know. I'm not the only one. I had a 1983 RX-7. Driving up this street, it was raining. I was speeding and a car came out of here. Total that shit. Younger, I was a speed demon. I crashed every car I think I ever owned. I don't know, I had the need for speed. I mentioned earlier we'll be back here, so let's talk about this house here. At some point my parents bought this house. A lot of my friends, when my parents eventually could afford a house, thought like, oh, we made it, you know. And there was always so much turmoil in our home. You know, our parents were always like at each other's throat. And eventually they got separated and got divorced. Been separated from my wife, so I ended up moving back into my parents' basement at some point. But my parents were already separated. My dad decided to list the house for sale. The house sold so quick, we just all had to like go. I ended up having to stay with my brother on his couch for a little bit. And then I couch surfed for a while from girl to girl. It's sad. At some point my wife and I, we decided to get back together. There's issues, but you know, I'm young, I have a daughter. She was in New York, I wanted to bring her back. I ended up getting an apartment here. This apartment, things never got better. They just got worse. Eventually I ended up going to prison from there and never came back. 78 Sherman Street. We lived on the first floor right there. That was our apartment right there. It looks exactly the same way it did when I lived there. So many great memories from Passaic and Patterson. You know, I really wish that I could afford to live here. And when I say that, I mean I can, but I would be like setting myself up for failure in the future. You know, $12,000 to $15,000 a year in property taxes. So I'll pay my house off and still have a $1,500 a month payment when I retire. That's crazy. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to breathe, you know. I'm not getting any younger, so that's why I don't live here. I love the culture here. Well, unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to continue to visit because I can't afford to live here long term. It's just not gonna make sense. And at 60, 70, I don't want to freaking move, man. I want to settle down now. I want to work less, you know. A lot of people working 70, 80 hours a week and then they retire and die. I work less now and enjoy my free time. You know, why do I want to work till the day I die? You know, working in Florida, that was one thing. I was working in those 55 and over communities, and I kept meeting a lot of people, you know, single people, widows and shit like that, and be like, hey, so what are you doing here? They're like, oh, I moved here with my husband when we retired, but he died a year later. That's crazy. That shit made me think twice. I'm like, Then I had that heart attack. I was like, oh, hell no, man. I got to figure out a way to work less. I don't want to pay $15,000 a year in property taxes.